Hi, thanks for joining me on HR Chalk Talk. I'm Brent Houchin, founder of Houchin Consulting and co-founder of Tech People Resources, also known as TPR. The HR Chalk Talk podcast is here to provide information to those in HR, those in leadership positions, and those who simply want to know more about HR best practices. Today, I'm excited and we're doing something a little bit different. We're interviewing a manager and owner of her own coffee shop, which is Melissa, and she owns and runs Hooked on Colfax. Melissa, what is the address here in case people want to stop by if they're in Denver?
Sure, we're at 3213 East Colfax Avenue near the Bluebird Theater.
Awesome. We're going to be discussing her thoughts and opinions as a leader and what she looks for and needs from an employee and what she does for them as employees. So, when we started HR Chalk Talk, we wanted to touch on many different subjects, all within the HR realm of work. With that in mind, getting leadership perspective was very important, as we have also received an employee's perspective, not from here, from a totally different company, but an employee's perspective as well. So we're going to jump on in. I've been in HR leadership for about 25 plus years. I've learned a lot, screwed up a lot, and I've done some good things along the way. Learning is not only important to me, but is also important to those that listen to my podcast. So, Melissa, my first question, she's over here fidgeting because she's just like...
This is scary.
I promise I'm going to be nice. Tell me about the person you learned from as a leader, so someone you worked for, and why you wanted to be like them.
Absolutely. I worked at a lot of shops when I was in school. And I would say one of my best experiences was a coffee shop that I worked at while I was in college. He was kind of an aging hippie, and he was so trusting of us and empowering of us. And I was 22 years old, and he trusted us all to make decisions for his business at a really young age. And I've definitely carried that over into my management style as well.
And did you think that he expected you to make mistakes?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I wasn't afraid to make mistakes because I knew that, he trusted me enough to talk about, why I made a certain decision and maybe how we would do it in the future. So
it sounds like one of the things you really loved from him was trust.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. I spoke on another podcast recently about trust. My dad used to use a term, trust is a must or your game is a bust. And I guess it's a bowling term. I have no idea otherwise, but I use it because I think it's actually a really great thing. And I constantly ask employers who tell me, well, trust is earned. And I try and tell them, actually, let's back up from that. If that's okay, but to actually say, I start with trust, and trust can be lost. So I think when you start with trust, people feel right off the bat like, ooh, I'm in a place that's going to care and want me to do well in my work.
Absolutely. No, and I also think sometimes people really surprise you,
Yeah.
They rise to the occasion and even exceed your expectations because you sort of put that trust on the table first. So
that's very cool. I love that you do that. So what are some of the worst things you have ever learned and vowed to never do as a future and current leader?
Oh, that's a long list.
The worst is always the easiest list. It's the good that's sometimes hard to remember.
So we've been here for 14 years.
Wow. Has it been 14 years?
Yeah. And what was I? I was like 20-something when we opened. And I had no idea what I was doing. Yeah. And I made a lot of really horrible mistakes that I look back on. Getting pretty serious for a minute, we had one employee with a drinking problem, and I caught her drinking on shift numerous times, and we just kept talking about it and hugging it out, and it just kept getting worse and worse. And sometimes there are some things you can't hug out. Is what I learned, and you
use this in HR. There are some things you just can't hug out. I'm going to totally use this.
Yeah, I now as an adult, an experienced adult, I would have handled that much differently. That was a huge learning curve for me.
What would you do different today?
I think I should have had a zero tolerance policy for it on shift, because I think what she was hearing from me is, maybe less, or like maybe if I hide the bottles and things like that. No, that's not what I was saying at all. I just wasn't creating clear enough boundaries, maybe.
Expectations that you needed from the people who work here, as an employer and as a business.
Yeah, I needed to be less warm and fuzzy and a lot more, not confrontational, but a lot more blunt about it, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, that was hard.
I can imagine. I mean, truly, I've worked in HR for a long time, but those situations are the ones that we remember and that we go, oh God, that was hard. That was tough.
It was hard and I didn't do it right.
Well, we all learn from that though, right?
Yeah.
So what does team mean to you when you hear the word team?
Sure. I hope that we create a team that really sets each other up for success. And that's huge for our shop. We're, sometimes pretty high volume. And if someone doesn't set the next person up for success, it can be a disaster.
Wow.
So, really caring about each other, not just, oh, it's noon, clocking out and leaving the next person hanging. We're really lucky right now. I think we have a really great team where, they don't live and die by the time clock. They look around the shop, see what needs to be done, see what their teammate needs before they leave.
They put some personal investment into this by the sound of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I'm guessing that you help breed that here.
Really try to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, it takes effort for sure. It doesn't always go, nothing always goes to plan, but for the most part, I think everyone really cares about each other, so.
That's great. When I walked in today, they were busy. They're bumping. Yeah. They always are here. And Melissa was taking a crate down from above one of the refrigerators, and one of her team members turned and said, "Hey, we've alphabetized those now. So if you could take note of that." And I loved, though, that he felt comfortable, and not in a rude way at all, but comfortable enough to say to you, "Hey, we've been kind of working on this as a team, and this is what we're doing." And that you responded with, "I love that. We should alphabetize everything."
He was just harassing me. We're not actually alphabetizing milk cartons. He just
harasses me all day. Better. that made that even more fun. But I also love that you had that relationship.
Yeah, no, for sure. Everybody gives me grief.
So, if you could create a specialized learning and development program for leadership, so you're in charge. You get to create this for a company or for the world. You're creating leadership training for the world. What do you feel all leadership needs to learn a lot more of? One subject you're like, everybody needs to learn this better.
Wow. I would say flexibility. That's been another item on my learning curve, for sure. When I first opened, I had a very rigid idea of what I wanted to see on a resume. What I thought were the skills and qualities I was looking for in a person. And back to that idea, people surprise you.
Yeah.
I've taken some chances here in the last few years that have been fabulous, that I wouldn't have done 14 years ago, so having a flexible mind and taking a risk maybe on some people that I wouldn't have before has really been great for the most part. You're not going to bat 100%, but for the most part, I've had some amazing surprises. So
that is, okay, I love what you just said, because it's one of the things that I've been really pushing on with clients of mine that I think is so important. That I think sometimes we create this image of, like for instance, the tech industry, that you must know this type of program or this type of software. But realistically, is that something they can learn?
Yeah.
Is that something they have to know as they walk in the door? Sure, it makes it easier for you and the team, but could this person be bringing something to the table that you don't have currently, and that person can learn, and everybody's actually going to win in the end, and you're going to be known as an amazing employer?
Yeah. No, definitely. I think a lot of things can be taught, and the flip side of that is a lot of things that maybe we don't put on our resume can't be taught, like interpersonal skills and life experience and things like that I never used to take into consideration, really. So
I love hearing how you've changed your view, how your view is not the same as it was 14 years ago when you were first starting, and that probably has changed the dynamic of your team quite a bit.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, besides that we're all older.
I hate when that happens.
I know, it just sneaks up on you.
So what is the hardest part of being a leader?
For me, being consistent. I really struggle with it.
Okay. But you recognize it.
I'm really trying, and it's really hard. You know, I think owning a small business is very emotional for me. You know, things go right, things go wrong, you know, up, down, all over the place, and showing up every day and trying to be consistent in managing a team. I've definitely struggled with that part.
Wow. You know, applause to you for actually realizing deficiencies that you still need to work on. The moment that we think that we're perfect and we have nothing to fix is when we're doomed. I mean, in my personal opinion, I think when we can step back and actually realize what we need to change and what we need to work on is huge. And consistency is something that I preach all day long to people, but yet it's something that I'm not the perfect person at either. None of us are. So good for you for recognizing that. What is one bit of advice you would give to future leaders of the world?
Leaders of the coffee shops of the world. I hope that, you know, we really work to create a diverse environment and an inclusive environment. And I think that takes effort. You know, I don't know that just happens naturally. I think you have to be aware of it. So my advice is always to try to, create that sort of culture, which at a coffee shop is probably a lot easier than other, you know, businesses. But, you know, for example, we host community groups. We provide a free meeting space. And what I love about that is we have religious groups, atheists, writers, recovery organizations, like a really just huge spectrum of people coming in the doors. And I want my staff also to, you know, reflect that diversity that's coming in. So trying to mirror, you know, our customer base with our staff has been kind of a goal for me personally.
Wow. I love that. Thank you. That's actually real good, and that translates to any business at all that is looking at it from that standpoint. It's funny. I initially thought, okay, who should I interview for this sort of thing? And I actually put something out there on social media saying, who would be interested? And Melissa, of course, writes me back immediately saying, I'll be your worst manager person to talk about, which is not the case, and why we're not calling it that. But she, I think every business has a way of translating to another type of business. And in your case, talking about diversity and inclusion and the types of people that you're working with and that it reflects within the community is huge. And I think all businesses should do their best to do that in whatever way that business can do it. That's awesome. So we are at the end of our time. Thank you, Melissa Sparrow, for joining us today. This has been extremely helpful and insightful for me, and I love hearing your insights. I really do. I think it was a lot of fun. Your time means a lot, and I think others will appreciate your time today. As we close, I want to remind you that you can always contact us at Tech People Resources for learning and development opportunities on any HR-related subject, or you can always reach out to me at Houchin Consulting for HR assistance of any kind. We are here to help. We're going to continue these special edition podcasts with guests in the future. They'll be announced on our social media pages as they are produced. And our next special edition of HR Chalk Talk, it's been 10 episodes since I screwed that up, we'll be meeting with an individual in a sourcing and recruitment role. This podcast will hit on some of the points that are important to leaders when it comes to sourcing their future team members. And remember, it's about respect. Your employees will thank you. Respect is an absolute must when leading others. The more you know, the more you will succeed. Thanks for joining me today, and have a great week.